Hello. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so let me get started here and I will go ahead and share screen. Okay, so quick announcement this week. We're not going to have class on Wednesday, so you don't have to come in. I will be on campus various time, but so that way you can tidy up all the things and make sure that we're all packed, go through your checklist, right? Passport, most important thing. And so make sure that you have all of those things ready for Thursday. Thursday, we are going to meet at 8 a.m. I think I also sent out announcement. So for today and tomorrow, we are going to work on assignment 2. This is a little bit more complicated than last week, but we'll be able to address it. And then you don't have anything to do during Costa Rica except for gathering your data. So I will talk a little bit about the course project, and you can select the case and find a partner or a group to work with. When we come back, I will show you how you can program graphical user interface. So your program actually have buttons, things. It can display some image, right? Like if you take pictures of birds and monkeys and really cool stuff, and you want to be able to show that for your project, you can, and I will show you how you can do that. So leaving this class, you should be able to write a pretty decent application, at least have the UI. I think some of the students might be interested in designing UI, and Python is one of the easier one to work with. So we'll talk a little bit about the project. I did post this. So I did post a page. There is an extra credit assignment, and this is just to help you prepare for your quiz. So before you take your quiz, which is really short, okay? You should do the game. It's not required, but it is extra credit. Once you finish the game, just take a screenshot. You can use your phone to do that. You can use your computer and then submit your screenshot for your score, even if you don't have a perfect score. Now, the person that has the highest score, I will email an Amazon gift card. It's $25, and that might come in handy if you want to buy something. So I did open everything until Sunday after we leave for Costa Rica. So tomorrow or Wednesday, when you have free time, I suggest working on the quiz. The quiz is basically all the stuff that we went over. So it's really good to take a look at your notes if you want to take the quiz and also do the quiz review game. Okay, so there are only a few things that we have to do this week. We don't have too much. And then when we come back, we will address the rest of the objectives. Okay, so for now, I'm going to go ahead and go over the assignment 2 and a little bit of the notes. So let me get my document up. So we are going to work on assignment 2. This is part of week 2, and we're going to look at our notes while we're doing that. So when we left off last week, you work with string, you work with lists, which is a container that you can hold text or values. This week, we are going to work with different container, and this is what most people in computer science would refer to as data structure. It's how you organize your data is really important in software development. It's really a way that we can use memory in the computer to be able to store our data and retrieve our data. So Python gives you a lot of option in how you use your data. So we already learned how to use the list, which use the square bracket. This week, we're going to talk about a tuple. So a tuple, what you simply do is you can define it similar to a list, but a tuple, it is very static. It's not designed to change. The only way that you can change the value in this type of container is to nest a list within it. Okay, and so we're going to take a look at our exercise in a little bit. So in this example, what you would see is that I define a tuple, which is where I'm going to store my data. And you would use a tuple if your data doesn't change. It is something that is going to be the same throughout your program. So we can just store it to access the element within it. And similar to a list, you would use index to be able to access each of the element inside the tuple. So in this case, if you want integers like 1, 2, 3, we can put it in this way. And the first index is 0, next is 1 and 2, and so on. You can also have a mix of data. And Python is very forgiving in how you store your data. Normally, we don't do this by practice, but in case you need to, you can. So you can have mixed data type because it is not a strongly typed language. You can have integer, you can have float, and inside it, you can also have string combined. And so this way, what we can do is if we need to access it, right, we can have various data type. And if you want to have a list within a tuple, what that does is we can nest it, or a tuple inside a tuple, you can also have it. So think of it like a sublist inside another container, right? And we would need to loop through in order to do that, or if you need to access individual element, you would use an index, okay? So here are some various examples that you can see from the week 2 notes. And I pulled this from, multiple open source stuff, and then also some of the old book that I was using. Hi.
Hi.
How are you? All right. So with that, what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at our first exercise in the assignment. Okay. And if you are using Tawny, you can go ahead and open it, or if you're using online interpreter like repoit.com, you can do that. Okay, so before we work on the exercise, let's take a look at the requirement. We are going to declare a tuple, and we are going to put in 5 values. It's given to us here, 8, 11, 26, 32, and 46. The only thing that can be replaced is within the nested list, okay? So we're gonna change 32 and 46 to 59 and 66, okay? And this is how you would write it. So I would first start with declaring my container, which is my tuple. And you can name it anything you want. You can say tuple 1. In my case, I just call it my tuple. And I would put in the values that are given to me, 8, 11, 26, 32, and 46. Let me turn on caption so I can have caption for the video. Okay. Then once you define your tuple, you want to nest the list. These are the 2 values that you're going to change. Remember what I said. So we cannot change 8 or 11 or 26. The only ones that can be changed are the ones inside the list within the tuple. Okay. Now, in order to access number 32 here, right? What I need to do is I need to tell it by index which one it is. So why am I putting a 3 here for the index? Is if you count 0, 1, 2, 3, it is at index 3. But remember that this is a list, so it is 2-dimensional. It's like a table, right? Like a grid. So you got to tell it that it is going to be the third in, or the 4th element, which is the 3rd index. And this is part of inside the second list, it's going to be the first element. So we have to say which element in the tuple and which element in the list. Okay. And so in order to access 32, I said that this is my fourth element, which is index 3 in the tuple, and it is the first element in the list because it is 2-dimension, right? It is one inside the other. So now for number 46, I want to change this, right, to 66. I would need to tell it again, right? Because why am I using a 3 for both of these? It's because it's going to treat that sublist as one element, right, inside the tuple. So I said that I'm going to access the third element, which is the list, inside the tuple, okay? And the index 1 here is the index of the sublist inside. So in a 2-dimension container like this, you need to be able to tell it which index exactly that you're accessing, okay? So it's like saying we're using the third row, right? First column, the third row, second column. That's how, if you see it like a table format or a grid. So as the sublist is treated as an element, we're only going to use the third index 3 plus you. So I tell it to replace it with 59. And the technique that we're using here is the reassignment. Why I'm not using a loop? Because I don't really need to change the others. I can't, right? I cannot change 8, 11, 26. So loop doesn't work here. You have to use index. Okay, so you have to tell it which index that you are accessing. And when you reassign that value, it's just going to take this and store over the old value. Like 59 instead of 32, and then 66 instead of 46. So now if I do a regular print here and I put my tuple like this, I want to see the original tuple, how the first change and the second change, right? So when I do that, I would have first my original values here, which is 32, 46, and then it's changed to 59, 46. And then after my update on the last assignment, so when I reassign the 66, it changed in the sublist. So what you need to take away from this is tuple elements do not get changed unless it is inside a list within the tuple, right? If you want a container that's modifiable, you would need to use a list. And if you want multiple dimension, we will work with the dictionary. So tuple, the value stays the same. It's pretty static. Unless you nest it with the list and you can modify it. The reason why I wrote this exercise is I want you to understand how to work with different container, right? Because we always have options in how we use and store our data. Any questions? So after we run the program, have an output, take a screenshot and paste it to a document so you can submit it for assignment 2 in week 2. Let me check participants to see who's here. Okay. All right. So that was exercise 1 in assignment 2. Yeah. Yeah, that's what yeah, it couldn't change the previous one because you were trying to change number 11. It says it can't do that. Yeah, so you missed it. Good. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, it's treating this list as free, this entire list, not they won't move forward. So it treats this whole sub list as one element inside the tuple. So what you're saying is it's going to be the third element, which consists of this list. And then inside the list, the index 0 is it's like table and row, and row and column. Yeah, for the 2D, you have to have two index, otherwise it won't know which. Other questions? Okay, so screenshot that. So if you want to remove element, right, you can delete the whole entire container, of course. But what you have to do is you would need to use Python basic things to pop things out. So you can use pop. Now what happens is it's going to size it down when you pop individual elements so you can delete it. And you can also clear it using clear method, but ultimately, we don't normally delete things in a tuple, like I said, because it's pretty static. So the way that this is designed is it's really to store data and not change. Okay, if you want to change, use a list. That's my best suggestion. Okay, you can delete the entire container, but it doesn't like to change within the container. So you can use things like count and index. Index just tells you, you know, which position your element would be. And so that will be what we would see for the tuple. All right, so next, let's talk about dictionary. So before we do number 2, I want to show you what a dictionary looks like. So a dictionary, you are going to use the curly brace, okay? And in the curly brace, you're always going to have the key and the value. For example, you're going to have name, and that will be, you know, the value will be your name. Age is the key, and the value would be like 26. That will be the value. So the way that it tracks the element inside the dictionary is through the key and whatever the value that you assign to it. So you would use a colon to specify how your key and value would be. Okay. Now, in the dictionary, what you can do is you can also use a function or a method called get. And it's going to be able to retrieve, right, the values for specific key. So for example, this is the dictionary called my dict. And what I want is I want name, Jack, and age 26. So when I print it, right, it should show the whatever the value that I'm asking for. So if you want the name only, you would pass it as a name like this. Okay. But you need to nest it because it is basically a sublist. So a dictionary, think of it like a multi-dimensional list. It would be more than 2 dimensions, right? So I love Python for the fact that they use dictionary instead of you doing 3D, 4D, but you can have multiple dimension arrays, okay? All right, so this is how you can define the dictionary. Just use the curly brace. And then we would specify the key and the value like this. Okay. All right. So let's work on number 2. So in number 2, it tells us to create a Python program. We are going to create a dictionary. And this is for a student, right? We're going to have the name is John Doe. This is the ID number, the course. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add an item, which is the semester, into that. Okay. So without using a database, this is what you would use, a dictionary, right? But if you have many records, you would use a database. So this is good for like a few records of students. But when it gets too large, it takes up too much memory, then you would use the database. And we want to change the course name from CIS30A to Python. And then we're going to remove the ID. And we are going to remove the last item in the dictionary. And then eventually we're going to clear. Okay. So I want to show you how you can use your method. All right. So let's look at number 2. Okay. So we are going to have a dictionary, and you can name this anything you want. In my case, I call it new dict for dictionary. And remember to use the curly brace. So my key will be name, and then my value for name is John Doe. That's what the program asks us to do, right? Or the question asks us to do. Then your ID, we put in the 9s. And then the key for our next element is going to be course. And all of these are strings. So whenever that you have text, you need to make it a string. And make sure that we close our curly brace. I want to print out my dictionary to show that I have it assigned. And then what I want to do is I want to add the semester. So we are going to add in, remember that all of these keys are just sublists, right? So we're going to add in semester, and we want to specify fall. And this is good too. Let's say that you want to build a program for your small business, right? Like if you have a therapy business, you can make your patient's record this way without making a database or using Microsoft Access, etc. But in Python, we can also use SQLite to make database. So once we add the semester this way, we're going to go ahead and print out the new dictionary to show. Then we're going to modify and change 30A, CIS30A to Python. Let me pull this down. This program is a little longer. Okay. Then what we're going to do next after that is we're going to get rid of the key ID. So we're going to pop it. Anytime that you do a pop, you can specify which one. If you don't put anything here, it's going to go to the last one and it's going to pop. And then we're going to remove the last item. So we're going to do pop item. Okay. We're going to take out the course information. And then we're going to clear everything. So when you do a clear, it just take out the key and the values in all the other elements. Now the difference between pop and pop item is pop, you have to specify which key you want to pop, and pop item, it automatically goes to the last item that was added and it's going to pop it. So let's say you want to use the dictionary for your project, right? You can create a dictionary. Let's say we create a dictionary for birds. And you can specify, right, species, and you can type in, you can put in the string for the type of birds that you see in Costa Rica. And then possibly you can put in like, you know, their migration information, or could be the length, how long they are, how big they are. So our dictionary can be very large, right? This is just have 3 items, but ultimately you can have more. So the takeaway from this is when you define a dictionary, you would use a curly brace. And inside the dictionary, every time that you use a separator like the comma, make sure you have the key and the value. And that can be numbers or string that for text. Okay. And you can add items by adding like this, using a list technique. So this is going to be list type. So it's going to add that in and we can define what that is. You can change by specifying what key you're changing, what value for which key. And that's how you can change by doing reassignment. So whenever that we use an equal, it's just going to update this value over. So it's going to write over this one. Okay. Now, realistically, in a larger environment, like I said, you would use a database, relational or non-relational. But on a smaller scale, we can have a dictionary. So when we run this, right, you would see, let me see here. It shows me name with John Doe, right, the ID, the course number, and then we add the semester. And then we change 30A to Python. It still kept the semester. What it's going to do is going to pop that out, right? We told it to get rid of the last item, so it's going to remove the semester. So we're back to the dictionary, but with the updated Python. Like this. So that's how you can create a dictionary. Any questions? Yeah. Yes. So most database would have some form of table and most relational database. So you would use kind of like Excel table in a way. Right, and would list your client, and when you link it, basically each of the columns can be like age, address, phone number, you know, etc. And so you would be able to link it to a specific field, which is the column, and then the row is going to be your record. So basically, a lot of the times what we do is we have an Excel spreadsheet and we port it over to a database and the front end. So, you know, in a bigger scale, that's what you want. And for Python, it works really well with SQLite, but you can use like, you know, other products would be Microsoft SQL, which costs license, and then MySQL. So most companies that you see on the web, if they use Linux environment, you would see that they would use like MySQL. Microsoft SQL is big in companies that have Microsoft products like RCC. So your student records and your grades and your transcript, all of that information exists. And so when you're using like EduMap or Web Advisor, basically that's linking to your record in data. Yeah, and so that's how it works. And all the games that you play, it does that too. So that's how they're able to pull your score. Right, so when you close the app, it's still going to update the information, so it stores somewhere. When you open the app again, it's going to go and pull it, so it keeps the status of the player, like what they won, what they lost. So it's very common. Now, a lot of the companies like social media, they use non-relational database, but that's just a different product, right? So ultimately, all of the stuff on the web, it has some kind of repository for where the data goes. But in the local area, without using a server, this is what you would see. You know, if you have a small business, Microsoft Access is good. You know, if you want to make like a little database, but when you get more than like 1,000 clients, it tends to be really slow and buggy. So what you want is you want to scale. So if your business have 100% growth year to year, if you start with 50 people, you know that by next year you're going to have a lot more. Then you would start with a decent product to scale. Other questions? Okay. So this is number 2, and this is how you create a dictionary. Okay. And in the notes, it also gives you various examples. How to do pop item. You can also copy. There are many different things that you can do to a dictionary, and this is some of the common functions or tool or methods that you can find. Okay. You can sort it, which is beautiful, and it's alphabetized it. If you're using a string for number, it's going to do an ascending sort, low to high. Okay. So when you access the dictionary, this is called dictionary comprehension, right? So I can also calculate values from the dictionary. I can also use a for loop to be able to do that. Okay, so it would be like this. So dictionary, I prefer to use dictionary instead of multidimensional array, but Python does support array as a separate thing. It's different than lists. So if you do take 30E with me later on to get the Python certificate, you will have exposure to multidimensional arrays. So for those students, a lot of the times, you know, if they go into data science, they have to take advanced Python, and advanced Python teaches you how to make fast performance program to compute data. It's beautiful. All right. Okay. So in data structure, there are other things. So in this area, now we're going to talk a little bit about set. So sets it can contain various value, and normally we use this for mathematical operations. So you can take, you know, groups of data and you can merge it. You can compare. So you can do like, you know, union, where you can merge two sets. You can also look at like how you would use a Venn diagram, where you can see what's overlapping in your data. So a lot of times sets is used when we're doing like data analysis. So data can exist in lists, in tuple, in sets, in deques. Okay. So there are 2 types of sets. And so a set can be mutable. That means that it's changeable. And a frozen set is not changeable. Okay. And so I put some example here for you. And so normally we can also set up like a tuple. We can convert it into a set by saying that it is a frozen set like this. And it would know that this set does not change. Or if you don't put a frozen set, you can also make it into a set using set function. Now, in the background on the low level, it is different on how it stores your data, right? And how you access your data and what kind of function you're using. So Python packages treat these things differently, okay? So by looking at this Venn diagram, I can compare group A to group B. So let's say that you're treating patients, right? And you know, you see research on medication all the time. You would give group A a certain type of medication, and then you want to check placebo on group B. So what we can do is we can compare, right, based on the results, how the medication is effective. And you can look at like COVID vaccine, other areas. So in a set, once you set it up, what you can do is you can look at using difference of that set. So it's going to tell you, right, statistically, we can use this and we can crank it out in Python, graph it, and do beautiful things with it. But difference function allows you to return the comparison between A and B. Okay, what's different between A and what, not the overlapping part right here, just the difference between A and B. You can also look at the intersection, which is the overlapping, right? You can look at things that are disjointed. That means that it's separate from the sets. And so there are many things that we can do with this. This is why Python is the preferred language for data analysis, along with R. Okay, because there are many functions that already been created. Okay. So we can also look at symmetric difference. That means that we are looking at both sides from group A and group B. So when you're doing a difference, you can say the difference in A, it's going to look at only A. But when you do symmetric difference, it's going to look at both sets. Okay, how are they different? You can combine them by doing union. So there are many things, many operations that we can do with sets. Okay. And then you can add things, you can clear, you can remove, you can update. So when you use update, it's going to add many items. Okay. When you only add one thing, you're going to use add like this. Okay. So check out the example. I think I also linked some video that I did the lecture on, right, for sets and examples from prior semester. So if you're interested, you can also see that as well. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do a little automation, right? Let's say that you have first name of people in this family. I have Pablo, Lila, Jorge, Carla, and Samuel. And I want to add the last name to the first name, but I don't want to individually do it because it defeats the purpose of, right, automation with software. Okay, so we want to be able to display the full list of names. Okay, full name in the list. Okay, for number 3. Let me get to Tani and I will open my 3. So in 3, we are simply going to use a list because we want to change the element inside this list. So I have the names. Sorry, I typed 23 here. That should be. And I put down their name, Pablo, Leila, right? Jorge, Carla, and Samuel. Then what I want to do is I want to use a loop because they all have the same last name. So I want to put in Pablo Hernandez, Leila Hernandez, Jorge Hernandez, Carla Hernandez, and Samuel Hernandez. So using a loop, it's going to go through. First, it's going to add Hernandez to Pablo. Second round, it's going to add Hernandez to Leila, and so on. Okay. Now, you want to be able to expand this list, right? What if they have more kids? So we can just add more to the list, but using the loop like this, you're going to have it ranged to the length of your list. So if I have 100 people, it's going to loop all the way to the end, right? Instead of using a numerical value for the elements. Now, I want to access each of the index inside the names, Pablo, Leila, Jorge, Carla, Samuel. That's why I'm using an I here. And as I do this, I use a compound assignment plus equal. So it's going to take the name and then add it with Hernandez. So when you use the compound assignment like this, what that does is it's self-added, right? And the things that we want to add is going to be Hernandez. Notice that I leave a white space here, right? Before the letter H in Hernandez. Otherwise, you're going to have Pablo Hernandez with no space, right? We want to make it a little bit more aesthetic in how we display. So I put a space after the quotation mark and then H for Hernandez. Otherwise, you're going to have, you know, the two words joined together without any space. And I want to print the names. Hello, how are you doing? Okay, it's okay. We're at number 3. Okay, so when we do this, what's going to happen is when we print, I would have Pablo Hernandez, Leila Hernandez, Jorge Hernandez, Carla Hernandez, and Sandra Hernandez, right? Because we want to be able to make it seamless, easy, and a for loop would work well in this area. Okay. Now, if they have different last name, then you have to individually access the element and then add it. But because they have the same last name, we can loop it and make it fast. Okay. And this is used in a lot of things, right? You can add data to all the elements, right? The same data to all the elements. So let's say that, you know, if you raise the price in the store for everything by $1, right? You see inflation or 10%. We can automate that. We can use a for loop, right? For all our prices in the inventory, we raise it by 10%. Boom, it's done, right? One shot, like 3 lines, not even that. Okay, so now you can see a little bit on compound assignment and then also a for loop for the list. And so with this, we can have the list grow later on, right? We can add in the elements and then we can still add the last name. Any questions? So make sure we screenshot, add it to the document so you can later submit. So in any container, a tuple, a list, right? A dictionary, a for loop would work. For a dictionary, you would need to have a nested for loop, a for loop inside a for loop for dictionary comprehension. Okay, so if you missed something, we can come back to it later at the end of the session. I don't expect to hold everybody until 8 today, right? I'm only going to do about half of the assignment. And then unless you guys prefer to do everything today and not come tomorrow. But yeah, I will be here tomorrow regardless. So, all right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to look at number 4. Oh, go ahead. Okay. So in your notes, after the sets information, it's going to go over collections. So this is a library that we can use, and in that we can use it to create different things like a deque. So a deque is a double-ended queue, which means that it is 2-tailed lists. So original list, you can only add to the end, right? Think of it this way, like when you get in line at the store, you have to, if you're the last person in line, right? You are going to be at the end of the line. In a double link list or a deque, what happens is the line has 2 ends. So if I come in, I can line up on the right or I can line up on the left. the way that we do this is it's allowing the system to access both sides simultaneously or at the same time. So it allows you to create a data structure that is fast, okay? And so more on the advanced level, a lot of times we would use a double-ended queue or a queue to be able to do this. In C++ and Java, this is a little harder to write, where you have to use a pointer. Basically, it points to the location on how it adds on both sides. Python, they actually create a library, which is a file that you can use to be able to manage that. So you would need to import in collections and be able to add in a deque. So let's say I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I know I need to add Sunday before Monday, right? And I need to add Thursday after Wednesday. And this is ideal for a deque, okay? So that way I can add both sides. So what we can do is we can add it Thursday after Wednesday. And then on the left, we can add Sunday. And when you do this, you can append left or append, regular append is going to be the right. Right? It's like how you line up, it's at the end, but append left, it lets you cut in front of the line on the left, on the top. Okay. So it allows the system to be able to add on both sides. Okay. And data structure like this is the same in most all C languages, right? It's just the way that we write it is a little different as far as syntax and how the technique would be. So you can use a deque method to be able to add things to the left and the right. And so here we write a function for that. Okay. So this is showing you a little bit on deque. In case you have quiz question, you can go and look at it. Okay, so let's look at number 4. So you have a tuple called nums. We have 10, 20, 30, 40. And we want to take all of these values. We want to add 10 to it, right? But wait a minute, you said you should say that you told me that tuple doesn't change. So we have to find a way to nest it into a list. Okay. And so we're going to add 10 to each of the element and we're going to print out the new container. Okay. So your output would look something like this. Okay. So on the next one, what did I not do? 4? I didn't add 4. One second. I had it written. I forgot to pull it. Tuple. Delete. Insert number, dictionary, John Doe. Not it. Sorry, I lost my exercise. I should have checked. Okay, 4, 2. I don't have number 4. Okay, so let's write it. So we're going to go ahead and define our tuple. into X. So I have 10, 20, 30, 40, right? And similar to what we've seen in the last one where we no, not this one. Where we would do this, right? What you're gonna do is you have to nest the values into a list. So hold on one second. I'm lazy, so I'm gonna copy this real quick. So in order to change this, you would need to nest this into your list like this. My tuples. Let me see if it likes this. Hold on 1 second. Oh, I forgot a separator. Did not define. Oh, take out the S. Done. So similar to the Hernandez family exercise, right? You are going to write this program. Remember, we said that tuple doesn't change. So in order to modify the value, you're going to nest it into a loop. And if we need to add 10 to each of the element, we simply have it loop. So the first time it's going to add 10 here, which gives you 20. And then the second element is 20. So it's going to plus 10, which gives you 30, 40, 50. And like I said before, this is useful when you have to raise prices, right? Especially in inventory, like if we want to increase everything, or when we need to modify, you know, everything inside the container. That will be a loop is ideal. Okay, otherwise we would need to use index. So with this, what it's going to do is going to access each of the index starting with the 0 here. First is 10, then 20, then 30, then 40. And as it does that in each round, it's going to take each of the index and add it by 10. And so when you run it, you would have 20, 30, 40, 50 as output, and we automate the plus 10. So let's say that you do a research and you increase dosage for the patient. Let's say they take normally 3 pills a day and you increase that to 5 pills. You add 2 pills for each of the patients, right? Then you can automate this with the loop. So you would have a total of 5 pills, or some patient would take 10 pills and they would have an increase of 2, etc. Okay, or ounces or whatever that you would add. So you would have this automatically added for everyone. So we would see that compound assignment is great. It's allowing us to be able to, you know, add, subtract, multiply, divide all of the elements within the container. Now, as you see, when it outputs, it gives you a list, right? Because we nested in here and it modified it. So it didn't keep the tuple. It's going to give you the list as the output because we had modified the entire list. So Python, the way it's designed is if you modify the tuple as entire tuple, it's going to give you a list at the end. Any question? Okay, once we successfully ran that, we can take a screenshot and add it. Okay, so for the next one, we're going to look at someone's saving. So Maria, for her vacation, she had decided to save money for 2 years. The first year she saved $200, $320, $180, $210, $175, and $305. The second year, she was able to save more, and these are the values. We want to be able to add up the amount that she saved each year, and we want to compare without using the sum function. So we are forced to use a for loop. So when you look at this program, if I don't use sum actually has a built-in for loop, but if I don't use sum, I would need to have to loop through each of the value and do a running sum, right, for each year. Okay. So 4, 5. So here is my, I'll relabel this A2EX5. So I have a Y1, which is going to be year 1 for Maria, and I put in the values. 200, 320, 180, 210, 175, and 305. Year 2, 550, 285, 195, and 410. So if I need to do like a financial saving program, I can have the user input and store it in these containers. We hard code this in because this is what they gave us in the program. Okay. So let me pull this down. So I wrote 2 options for this. There are 2 ways that you can do this. And you can do either or. Okay. So I have to compare which year she saves more. Okay. So for year 1, I want to be able to find the sum. So I have a variable and I initialize it as 0. So I would say sum of year 1 start with $0 and sum of year 2 start with $0. Then I have to loop it through, and Python lets you do this in 1 line. Okay. Other languages you can't. Okay, so we can say for I in year 1, so each of these index, it's going to add it just like what we did before, but it's going to add each of these index. So sum year 1 is itself added with the index. So it's going to take 200, added with 320, that's 520. And as it goes through, it's going to add each of the index. And I would do the same thing for year 2. Once I have the loops to sum up the year 1 and the year 2, I would compare. If sum of year 1 is greater than sum of year 2, print Maria saved more in the first year. Else, print Maria saved more in the second year. Now, if you, for the option 2, if you use the sum function, then you can do it this way, right? I still have to, so I just need to say, instead of using the for loop like this, the option 2, I would put if sum of year 1 is greater than sum of year 2, which is what we define here. It's going to add it all up, right? Print, she saved more in the first year, else she saved more in the second year. So without using a for loop, you only need like 2 more lines after you define this. If you use a for loop, you have like, you know, a couple more lines. So using a sum function is definitely going to save you a little bit more typing. But if we're forced to use a for loop, that's how it's going to look. Now, added to this program, right, we can add the interface, the UI, where the user can click add the amount, and then it's going to be able to give them the financial prediction on how much they saved, and then if they're making interest with 2%, then we would show that for their savings. So ultimately, you would see these financial software, right? All of it in the back is like this. We would want to be able to compare how much money we would make or save in each year. And you can do either or, right? So in option 2, I don't have to use the for loop. I don't need to do this. I can just add these 2 lines to the 2 on the top, but that requires that I use sum. So I want to show you that it's still going to output the same. So even though there were less months that she put in her saving or less times that she added to her saving, it shows that she had saved more in the second year, right? Because the amount's higher in each time. So with this exercise, we learn how to implement control statement using for loop, if else. And the program requires to do what's called a running sum using a for loop. And we also operate comparison using if else. So for a lot of my students, what I encourage is whenever you started seeing these and how you solve the problem, anytime that you come across things in the future, you're going to be like, oh, I can program that, right? It should be really easy. You can think about how you would be able to go through the process to really build what we call an algorithm, which is implementing a procedure to solve the problem. Software is really designed to solve more complex problem for us, right? Okay, so we see that she saved more in the second year. Any questions? All right. Pretty easy. Okay, so earlier we talked a little bit about set. We are going to do something with number 6 on sets. Okay, these are frozen sets. So that means that we are going to compare them to see if they're overlapping. So you're given set A, set B, and set C. 100, 200, 300. And by looking at these values, you see that B and A have 300 in common. And then B and C have 500 in common because it's repeated. See? Those will show up on the intersection. So intersection, think about like how you drive. That's when, right, you see the opposite side of the car. So this is where we would see the overlapping value. Now the difference, we can look at the difference between A and B. What is in A and not in B, right? So when you're using difference function, all that does is it can look at one set, what's different in one set. But when we see symmetric difference, it's going to look at the differences in both sets. Okay. And this is so crucial, especially like not just beyond research, but for data comparing. Okay. In sales, in everything that we use. And then we're going to combine using union. So we're going to use some of the built-in method for Python. Okay. All right. So here I put down some of the answer and how it should look like. Okay, so let's work on number 6. Okay, so we would start with defining. I modified the assignment. So let's say A2EX6. We would start by defining the sets that are given to us. You have A set, and this is a frozen set. Okay, B sets, frozen set, and C sets, frozen sets. We want to check what is overlapping between A and B, which is intersection. So when you do that, you simply do a print. You bring down the set name that you're checking against the other, right? So you would say A set intersection B set. So it should give you the 300 because they share the same value, right? 300 in both sets. Now for the next one, we're going to compare between A set and B set, the difference. Okay. What is different between A to B? Okay. A to B. So it's going to look at A has 100, 200. B does not. Right. And B has 400 and 500 and A does not. So we're checking A against B. So it should give you the difference that B doesn't have. So for the second step, it tells you that your frozen set A has 100 and 200. Notice that it lists the 200 before the 100 because that was the last one it accessed. Okay, so it lists it backwards. Then for the third step, it asks you to look at whether A is disjointed from C. So that means that it has no overlapping value. So whenever you check for is disjoint, it's only going to tell you true or false. So when I look at the A value, 100, 200, 300 compared to 500, 600, 700, there's no shared value. There's no similarity in the values. So it's going to tell you that's true. It is disjointed. Okay. Now, if I have 500 in A, it's going to say false because it shares the same, it has a common value. So when I do discrete structure, CIS7, I go over sets in detail for students, and we do it in C++, right? All right. Then what I want to do is I want to take set A and I want to combine it with B by doing a union. So with that, it's going to put in the value. Notice that it's not sorted, right? So it has 400, 100, 500, 200, and 300. And if you want it to sort, you have to force it to sort. So you do a sort function outside of that and then print it. Okay. Then after I did the union, I want to look at the differences in both set between B and C. So when you look at B, it has 300, C doesn't, so it lists, right? Yeah, so 300, 700, 500, it's not going to list that. And then the 600. So B to C. $300, $400, $600, $700. Differences in both sets. Where when you use difference, it's one to the other. Okay. And that's, you know, anything that you can compute in math, you can do it in code. So. Any questions? This is exercise 6, just a few more, and then I'll wrap it up for the day. Unless you guys want to go through the whole 20 shebang. And then you don't have to come tomorrow. I'll be here on campus. I'll be here actually inside this room in case. We'll see how it goes. Because the other ones are a little bit more lengthy, so. Any question? So now you're able to work with sets. And so it's really up to you on what you want to do as far as the project, because, you know, you have a lot of different options on how you want to store your data. And we'll talk about your project too today. Okay, next we are going to work with strings or characters here. So you're given letters 1 and 2, and this is D, E, F, G, and H, I. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to copy one to the other. We're going to display after we copy. We're going to add more to the letters. Okay, so we're going to add the 2 letters together. And then we're going to look at the difference. So very similar to what you've seen in number 6. Number 7 is where we work with characters. And then I want to show you how you can use this card to get rid of some of your element in a set. Kind of like, you know, remove. And then we want to be able to print the content. Okay, so now we're going to look at number 7. To EX7. So given to us that we have 2 container. And notice that I'm using the curly brace, but this is not a dictionary. This is a set. So curly brace is commonly used for sets in many languages, right? If you can also convert things into a set by using set function. Now, if you make it into a dictionary, it's going to require a key and a value. So in this case, we just have a set where we have multiple elements. So here I have letters 1, D, E, F, G. And for letters 2, I have H and I. I want to take letter 1 and then copy it to letter 3. So it's going to make a duplicate of this container and into another container. And that's how you can copy data. So you simply take a container and you issue a .copy and store it into the third letter here, right? So this is a separate container. So I'm going to copy this and put it here. And so when you do a duplicate, it should print out the same. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add individual letter to the first container, letters 1. I'm going to do an H and an I. And then I'm going to compare, after I add the H and the I, I'm going to compare that to the second container, which only has HI. Let me pull this down. So I still have a little more. It's not letting me pull anymore. So sorry, I'm going to zoom in a little, okay, so you can see everything. It's not letting me pull down anymore on the shell. Okay, I'm going to hide my shell for now so you can see. So after we compare the difference between letters 1 and letters 2, we are going to remove the I by using remove method. So it should only print up to H at this point. And then we want to print out the number of elements inside the container. Okay. So it should, we can do a count here or we can do a length here. That's really up to you. You issue a count. You can also use a dot count or you can do a length. I like using length so it counts up the elements. And then I'm going to get rid of E. So I'm going to discard E and then print out the updated container. And I'm going to discard I and print out the updated container. And that should be the entire. So this shows you how you can remove, add, right? Change your sets. This is a mutable sets where it uses the curly brace. Earlier, when you use a frozen set, you have the curly brace and then the square bracket. So if you need to modify container or modify elements inside the container, like a set, we should use a mutable set. And with that, you can use built-in functions to be able to add, remove, change your set values. And it doesn't really matter whether you have letters, right, or numbers. You can still use the set. So let's take this to like social media, right? Example. So I can have a set that contains all your contacts or your friends on social media, right? You can block someone or delete a friend, right? So basically that's a discard or remove. You can also add new people. And also, right, social media, sometimes they would remind you. So it would say that, oh, so-and-so is your friend's friend. Here's their contact. So they would do a difference. And it would pull the contacts that you don't have and then advertise it to you and say, here, you can add these people as your friends. You see? So we can apply this to many areas, many apps that we normally use. So we start with defining our sets, and then we would operate the things that's needed, like copy, add, compare, which is a difference. That's also a pseudo function. When you do a difference, it's actually a built-in if else, right? And then so it's gonna loop and check. And then it's gonna we do remove, and then we do discard. You notice that when you copy, it tells you the memory address. That's your system address. So it's saying that it did the copy and it put it at this location in your memory, in your computer. Okay. So we added the letters. You see that printed. We also got rid of the letters. We checked the difference. Okay, any questions? So whenever you see stuff on Venn diagram, right, ideally the data in each of your set, you can use mutable sets or even frozen sets to compare. If you want to modify, then use mutable sets. Okay. All right. Any questions? We only have a few more to go, so if you need a break, you can take a break. Okay, there's snacks. You need to take a bathroom break. It's fine. Did anyone finish packing already? No? So go through the list of what to bring and then maybe check the things that you need to get. I am 80% packed. I just need to get a few more things like sunscreen and bug spray, and I charged all my power banks yesterday, so I just gotta pack my backpack, which is probably a task. 5 hours on the plane, I need to download some Netflix and watch it, so. Yeah. I don't know, I have to look tonight, so I'm gonna log in and download and maybe like a series or something to watch.
What are your favorite type of series to watch? Which genre?
Yeah, I watch everything. I watch sometimes scary things, sometimes, and then I also watch K-drama sometimes.
You can help it.
Yeah. And but they have some good stuff out right now. Or sometimes I download a movie. So I haven't been on Netflix for a bit, so I also have Hulu too. It's just Hulu. I have the lowest tier Hulu, so there's ads, but they do have good shows on there sometimes.
They do. And I mean, my mom, we were watching one that like Oprah, what's her name? So it's like seasons. So
Oh wow.
got me hooked. She's like, I learned it week 2 weeks for you to come back so I could keep on watching. Kind of like teasing me like she's gonna keep on watching. Oh god.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that we have to sit through the ads. And that's pretty.
I think you can also pay for like a few dollars more per month and you can skip the ad. Like their ultimate tier or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's like regular TV. Yeah, I have the 3-in-1. I have the Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN. That was when Amazon did the 3-in-1 package for something, and I ended up.
I feel like everybody has
Yeah.
like 3 like network TV.
But Disney Plus always crashed on me, so. But occasionally Disney Plus got some good shows on there too.
I think the movies for me, but I like.
Yeah. I know Netflix did have, one of my students who was telling me about like, I did start watching, what was it? It was like, I forgot what it was, but he was like this creature, and then it was kind of slow at first, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can get into this, but so I started a few episodes. So I'll probably download that once I finish. Because sometimes I'll start a series, I'm like, oh, it's kind of slow, so watch me go.
Yeah. So I'm looking for the first episode or philosophy.
Yeah. Okay, so a few more minutes and then we'll start back up. And then on Wednesday, don't forget to check in with Alaska Airline. I think he sent an email with everybody's ticket. Okay, so you just need to check in using your the code they gave you. So
I tried. I don't remember getting like it.
okay.
Was I pretty like at the bottom of it, all of our names? I tried using that. Isn't that was too early?
Yeah, you have to do it within 24 hours.
I know that you can like, take for your baggage, like, whatever.
Yeah, but I think the check-in process will let you do that, so you can do that there, you can do it at the kiosk. Yeah, I'm gonna check mine in, 'cause I try to go with the carry-on and yeah, that didn't really work, cause I actually have equipment that I'm bringing for you guys. I did buy some, soil moisture sensor, it's really cool, you stick it in the soil and it'll tell you like how moist it is.
Oh, I have my plants at home.
Oh, yeah. So I brought some and I brought some rulers, so if you wanna measure like leaf or animals or whatever. I think we're gonna go to a park that will have monkeys, and then there are a couple bird sanctuaries, so those are gonna be really cool.
I was wondering, like, are they gonna have like binoculars for us?
I don't know if you have a nice one, if you wanna bring, you should bring, but I think the sanctuary, the areas that we're gonna go to, some of it is just like free zone, so,
Okay.
yeah, so you'll be able to see them fly, a lot of the parrots. Yeah, I heard that they're really cool. Yeah, I heard that they're really cool, so I wanna see the toucan. They're like, they have like the deep beak and then, yeah, and they sound really cool. Yeah, those are the toucan.
I probably wanted one. I watched, I don't know if you look up like Baby Weekend.
Yeah.
Do this, I've heard it ever. I don't know why. I don't know on,
Yeah,
yeah, I think I've always loved that. character. I think it was said about.
and turtles, baby turtles are probably, if I hope that we'll be able to see, because they're gonna take us near the end, we are gonna go to the beach area and we'll be able to see. And they would come to lay eggs. People say that it's amazing. So I've never seen, yeah, I've only seen fishes that come to the shore, like, in San Diego, grunions, they will come to lay eggs. And you would see silver, they'll flop. People catch them too, but they'll flop, it would be like silver on the sand. Yeah, I've never seen I've seen on Discovery Channel. but-
It's only like in person.
Yeah, I think it will be amazing.
Fingers crossed. It's just one.
They say that, it'll be regular, so in the evenings,
Yeah, that's true.
it'll be cool.
So are we gonna like, they never said like, are we flying back in our thing?
Yes.
So then we're like, oh, back.
Yeah, so the two location at the end, it's gonna be close to where we depart. So they had logistically designed our trip to come back to, so the beach, and then I think the bus is gonna take us back. Cause I don't think that you can fly international from the other airport. You have to come in and leave from San Jose. Yeah, and the flight tickets at that too.
I didn't think that. I did like how they kind of like, they're kind of everywhere around like, so central.
I feel like they fulfill, because I put together a wish list of 14 destinations. And they were able to fulfill most of it, which I felt like that was really good. So I did a little bit of research and I asked people and, what they recommend and stuff like that. I wanted a little bit more beach destination, but I think because of the season, they said that there's certain beach areas not accessible. Or it's not there, nothing to see really, so that was what they put together. Well, we'll see. I think I'm excited. I think it will be great. All right, so let's resume and then so that way, you can go home, grab dinner, relax, whatnot. All right. Sorry, my battery is always dying. So next we are gonna look at the next question. And I believe we're gonna do the deck. Okay. So we are going to do number 8 and we are given months deque. So here you are gonna have to import collections. This is a library or a file from Python that we're gonna use to be able to use some of the functions for deck. So we have March, April, and May. We're gonna append, we're gonna add in June, July, and August. And then we're gonna add to the front of March, December, January, February to the left side. We're gonna remove the first and the last item, and then we're gonna remove June. So I wanna show you how you can create a deck. It's number 8, right? So here I can probably, sorry, let me view change. Okay, so the first part, the first line that you need to have is going to be import collections. And with that, what we're going to be able to do is access the library from Python. Then we're going to define our months. So you can copy and paste that in. That's fine too. Be careful with the quotation mark, because from Word to Tawny or IDE it changes the quotation. So you might need to retype the quotation if you copy and paste. So once we define our deck, we're gonna append, right, June, July, and August. Can I make it into a list and loop through those things? Sure. Okay. But I wanted to do them individually. So when you do the append, it's going to add one element at a time. So we are going to do a June, July, and August after May. So it will be in order. So it's going to add it back here. Now, when you do append, it's going to go to the right. Append left, it's going to allow you to add to the left. So we're able to add to the left side, December, January, and Feb. So once we add them, we're going to print our container. This is different than using a list or a tuple, right? Where everything used right-hand side. A deck allows you to access both sides. And then what we're going to do is after we had print, we want to be able to pop. So if we want to pop the last item, you just simply use a pop. If you want to pop on the left side, you do a pop left. And then if you want to get rid of a certain element, you specify that in the parameter using remove. So this allows us to create a container, store elements into the container, add more elements, get rid of elements on both sides, and remove specific ones in the middle. And this can be used for a lot of different things, just like any other containers. You can make this into like a container for music playlists, right? Often that we would see that people add artists and songs, and they don't necessarily go in specific order. We can organize things by genre, etc. Or it could be for values in a business, like for sales, for inventory. Or it could be for treatments, patients, many things. So a deck grows on both sides. That's the benefit of using it. It's a double-ended queue, which is equal to the doubly linked list in C++, or you would see that in C. But on the doubly linked list, if you see that in C++, it's actually linked back to the beginning. The tail ties back to the beginning. So it's a little different. So as you run the program, you would see your deck, and notice that it will tell you it is a deck, right? That's why we're using the collections and deck here. So it tells you that's the type of container. We were able to add June, July, and August. Then in the front, we add. Now notice that when it does, it's last in, first out. So when you stack it, when we added December, January, February was the last thing in, so it's at the top, right? It's like how you stack your plates. So February was the last thing that comes in, so it's gonna be in the front left, which is what you see here. Okay, so the structure is very similar to what you've seen in the stack in C++ or C. So if I want it sorted, then now at that point, I have to issue a sort function. Otherwise, it's going to be out of order. Okay. So when you add it in, don't assume that it's going to be putting it in order. We have to make it in order. So when it get rid of it, the last thing that comes in, it's going to be the first thing that goes out. So last in, first out. And then at the end, once we pop everything, we got rid of February, we removed June. So we left with January, December, March, April, May, July. So creating this is much simpler than what you've seen in other programming languages, because the other programming languages, you got to use pointers. You got to point to which one is the beginning, which is the left, which one is the right. It's a little bit more complex. So Python simplify that, and you save a lot of coding this way using a library. Many of Python libraries written in C too, so. Any questions? No questions? Okay, there will be some question on either quiz or final exam that relates to deck, right? Importantly, that is tied to collections module, which is a file or a library file. And then you can find information also in the notes. Okay. So now we're going to do the next question. We're going to look at grade comparison between two students. Carolina earns certain quiz grades, 92, 87, 93, and 88. Raquel earns 88, 92, 81, and 97. You are going to create sets like what you've seen before, and then we're going to compare, right? So I kind of wrote down the steps in purple. So first we're going to declare two sets. They are mutable sets to contain the score of the students. Then we're going to use difference to compare, like what you've seen before. We're going to look at intersection. We're going to use min to look at the lowest score for each of the student and remove. You know, so how some professor, they always give you, like they're going to delete one of the lowest quiz score, for example, right? This is like the program that we would write. Okay, so for 9, this is what it would look like. So I have C score for Carolina's score, and I'm using a mutable set. So curly brace on both sides, 92, 87, 93, and 88. Then I want to print out her score. So I put down Carolina's scores is going to be C scores. And then for Raquel's score, I put down her score. So we define another set for her score, 88, 92, 81, and 97. And we are again using mutable sets. And we want to print out the score for Raquel's. Then we simply compare one to the other. So the first print here on line 9, I'm comparing Carolina's score to Raquel's score. Then the other way, Raquel's score to Carolina's score. So when you're using difference, you have to choose which one you're comparing to. And if I want to do both, I would do symmetric difference. So when you're writing 11 and 12 ultimately gives you the same thing, right? So it's going to look at both sets. Then I wanted to look at the common scores, if they share anything that's the same. So I know the 88 is going to show up, right? So intersections allows you to look at the overlapping or the common scores in both. And then I want to get rid of the lowest score for each of the students. So we are going to check for the minimum score for Carolina's and Raquel's, and we're going to operate the remove and print out the score. Okay. And this is how you would do that. Super easy. So sets can be applied to a lot of different things. So when we output, we should see each of the students' score first. Then when we look at the difference in this section, you would see that 93, 87, 81, and 97 for each student there. And then the symmetric. So when we do symmetric, the order of how it access one to the other, right? But ultimately we have a container of the same thing. So it gives you the subset of what is different. Same thing with this one, right? The subset of what's different. And then we look at the common score. So they both have 92 and 88, the same. So and then we got rid of the lowest score for each student, and it reduced the set down to 3 elements instead of 4 for each one to print at the end. Now we can also do something different, like looking at the minimum value and then maybe get, you know, if each student gets 10% extra credit, we can also operate the min and then multiply it by 0.10, right? And then add it back. So we can do a compound assignment with that. Compound operator with that. So when you look at something that has a gradebook like Canvas, or, you know, for all of us, we use some form of gradebook application. right? It gives you some options on how to remove the minimum score, how to compare student scores. This is what will be in the back. Now Canvas is linked to a form of database, so that way it can retain your grades for a long time. So it's a little bit higher in scale. Instead of storing things locally, we can put it on a server, which is just another computer. Any questions? So I will try to post the recording tonight. When I get home, if it's not able to translate over too quickly, I'll get it linked by tomorrow, okay? So if you need to watch it again, you can. Okay. So at Cal State San Bernardino, right, for coding classes, final exam, they make you handwrite your code, like, or sometimes type, but on an application. So they have a software that checks it. Right, the chair that teaches C++, at the end, they would give you the problem to solve, and then you write down your code. No one, that's a good way to check to make sure that they're not cheating.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I would want to handwrite any of my code, because I like using IDE where sometimes it fills stuff in for you too, right? But you know, every professor has a different way to assess students, so. Okay, questions? We're good with this? Want to move on to the next one? Okay, so you have an option. We can power through and do as much as you can on the 20 questions assignment, or we can stop and then come back tomorrow. What would you guys like to do? I'm fine with whatever you want to do, because I'm pretty lenient on it. I will be here tomorrow. There will be snacks tomorrow. Yeah, there's about 20. The other ones are a little bit longer. There's one that has 3 files, so I want to teach you how to do a module. And we'll come back to the concept when we work on the project as well, so. Okay, so let's go through the next one, and I want to go over the project a little bit to talk about it, so you kind of have a preview. And then if you feel like you want to do more, we can do more. Or if you want to stop and then come back tomorrow, I'm fine with that too. Okay, that's up to you. But you do have Wednesday off. I do give you a Wednesday off already. Okay. Anybody still working on this? We're okay with this? Okay. That one's pretty easy. I'm gonna let you skip 10 because it's basically the same as the last one, but in text. But if you coded already, that's fine. I'll try to give you extra credit later. Let's do number 11. So a car traveled 50 miles the first day, 70 miles the second day, and 100 miles on the third day. Write a function that converts a total miles in kilometers. 1 mile is 1.6 kilometer. So first we need to add everything up, right? And we already know that we're going to have to do a running sum or a sum function. But what I want to show you here is I want you to show you how to define a function. And in Python, you would use the keyword DEF. So in your notes, starting on page 11, it talks about the type of function. So there are two types of functions. So far, we've been using the built-in function. These are already been created, like sum, count, right? Start with, is alpha. Those are built-in functions that came with Python. You are going to create your own function. You are going to define it. And the function can be anything we want to do, to execute. Basically, it's going to complete the task that we tell it in our code. Okay. So in Python, you would start with DEF. This is very similar to other languages like PHP. So you would give your function a unique name, like how you name a variable or a list, right? So you want to make it a unique name. But when you name a function, really imply in the name what it's going to be doing, right? Like if I want to be able to ask the user to type in their name, that will be like get username. So a lot of times by practice, a lot of professors teach their students to say use get and set. Get is to obtain, set is to be able to compute the value. But you can name your function whatever, it's your program. You can intend for it to do something. So think about the purpose of your function and how you want to name it, right? So I can have a function like this, greet, where it's going to say hello to the user. So it's going to ask them to input their name. Then we are going to define a function and we're going to take their name and plug it in here and say hello, right? Like let's say the name is Mary. Hello, Mary, good day, right? And in Python, the bottom of the program is the main, right, area. Now you can have it if the namespace is main, call the function, but if you automatically put in the call here, then you are going, it's going to execute. It's like how your parents name you a certain name. That's how you define a function. Whenever they need you to do chores, they just call you, right? At the end. So think of it that way. You are going to define a function, give it a name, and whenever you want it to do a task, call it, right? And normally we would call a function in main, but in Python, you don't need to have a main function to call it. The bottom of your program is main, right? So you can define a function named main, but it is unnecessary, right? Some student, they use main. Sure, it's fine, but you don't really need to have a main function because that just sometimes can be confusing. Okay, so that's how you define a function. So let's look at number 11. We're going to skip 10, okay? Because ultimately it's like the other, but with letters. Okay, really easy. It's like a 4-line program. So this is assignment 2 EX11. So we know that these are the miles that the car travels. So I have a list called miles. And I would have 50, 70, and 100. And I want to have a function to convert miles to kilometer, but the total miles. So I would name my function miles to kilometer. That makes more sense, right? Or you can say convert miles to a kilometer, whatever you want to name it. So to do a function, to define it, you just say def. And that's a keyword. So notice that it highlights it in purple here for me on Tawny. And I give it a name, miles to kilometer. And inside my parameter, I want to pass num, which is the variable. Okay. The reason why I say num, that's going to be the index value or the value at each of the index. So it's going to go through and it's going to add everything. Okay. And I want to print out total kilometer. And I want to format it. Otherwise, it's going to give you a bunch of decimal points. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take each of these, multiply it by 1.6 because we gotta convert it. And then I'm gonna total them up. I can do a sum first and total, or do a for loop and add everything up and then convert it. That's up to you. So I individually convert like 50 times 1.6, right? And then 70 times 1.6 and so on. After that, I'm gonna then take them and then add them up to use a sum. So notice that I called the function here. So what's going to do is going to execute each of these by multiplying and then add them up. Okay, so this is where your function call goes. So in Python, define a function, call the function. Now, in some case, you're going to see something like this. Okay, I'm going to put it on the bottom because you don't need. If namespace is main like this, underscore equal main like this. And then what will happen is, oops, you can actually call it then. Or you can also say if namespace underscore main, it's would do a call. So you can place a call underneath here. Okay. But Python, it has a main on the bottom. So it does enter main here. So you don't, in C, you have to have a main there and you added the function call in the main, but we don't need that. So I like it. All right, so when you run this, right, it tells you that the total kilometer is 352. Done. So there are several ways we can approach this particular problem. We can do a sum first and then do the multiplication after, but we have to write a function. That's what the question asks us to do. Okay, so that's how you can define a function. And this is your function call. Okay. And then I pass the list here to do the sum. Any questions? So if for those students who are pursuing like their bachelor degree in CS or CIS, right? Sometimes they have to do coding camp for placement, right? If they give you, if it was me, Java, C++, or Python, I pick Python. Because your line of codes it's like you can do it. It's so short, it's sweet, simple. Okay. C++ is a little bit more lengthy. Java is more. Okay. All right, questions? Okay, so what will it be? Do we power through and complete as much as we can out of the assignment and not come tomorrow? Or do you want to come tomorrow because you're tired, you want to go home? Okay. Let's talk about the project and I'll give you time to kind of think about it. Okay. All right. So I posted the project on your Canvas. There are multi-parts to this. Ideally, it would be best if you work with someone else, right? Do not do the project on your own, because every time I read the assessment from the student, the survey at the end, every one of them, I should have done this with a partner. I should have done this with a group. So the maximum I will allow is 4 people per group. So, you can do it with your roommate or with someone else on the trip. That's fine. You can pick. If you decided to do it on your own because you want to, that's totally fine too. Just keep in mind it's a lot of work. Okay, and we need to submit this by February 9th, which is the last day of the class. When you come back from Costa Rica, I will preview a similar project, my project, So that way you can take a look at how you would do it, okay? But if you click on the information and requirement, there's a document that I uploaded. I modified this like 3 times, sorry. That's why it has these document values on here, okay? So let me go to your, because normally for this class, I usually demand a little more, but we want to tie this back to the Costa Rica trip. So there are several ways that you can do this. The first option is to do soil moisture analysis. We will travel to many areas where you would be able to examine volcanic soil. In our area, we use a lot of the soil in this area. You would see that it's clay soil, especially for Moreno Valley. I don't know about other areas like, you know, the greater part of Inland Empire where you live. So a good way to do this is I do have a stick that you stick to the ground and you would read. And so you would write down like the location and then the soil moisture, and you will need to measure that. So you need to gather the data and then ultimately put it into a CSV file, which we use Excel. Python has a great number of tools. I will show you later on how you can use NumPy. And other areas where you would be able to graph it, visualize it, do beautiful things with it. But in your program, I'm going to grade the following. So you need to know how to add comments. We all know how to do that by now. Have variables or lists to be able to use string to display or control your text output. You need to have 2 functions. We learned that today, right? Maybe to do a sum or to do some kind of statistic. That's up to you. You will need to implement a loop, likely for your data, you will. And you don't need many loops. I just need one form of loop. Anytime that you have a loop, that's given a point, right? You need to also have control statement with if else or if else, and that's 10 points. And then we are going to create a module, our own library file. And we need to be able to call it. This is the next part in our assignment. So I want to show you how you can do that. We will learn how to be able to adapt interface. I don't want crazy fancy stuff, okay? People think that, oh, they're going to add a menu. If you put a button on there and your button click and it works, that's fine with me, okay? Or a text box. So I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to do that to record input and then display output, or even put image, right? Like click a button and it shows like bird images that you can take. So we are going to do a UI exercise later. That's 20 points. I forgot to modify this, but you don't need to do object in class. That's part of your bonus points. So you don't need to have objects, but for those students who want to implement class objects and be able to use that, you can. This is a little bit more complex in OOP. So I understand that some of you might not even program in Python later. So I want to kind of remove that. We are going to learn how to read files and then also output files like receipts or printout. So you are going to have some form of file operations, and then you need to do exception handling, which we will talk about. Okay, so add up to be total points. Now, all else failed, I'm going to tell you this. I want you to attempt the project, at least submit something. Okay, so I can give you partial credit, if not a completed project. Okay. I've had students in computer science, and when I give them project, they always scope their project really big. Like they would do a blackjack program with all of these crazy features, and then they ended up running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you to start really simple. Just think about a simple project like, oh, you know, I'm just going to go and look at a bunch of birds, take some pictures, write down some information. My program is going to show a picture of birds and, you know, maybe like about a little bit about birds in Costa Rica, and that's it, right? And then add in the components after, okay? But don't start it out with like, oh, I want to put like menu, drop down menu buttons, and this does this and this does that, and then you're going to end up not finishing it. So start your scope small. Anytime that you do any project in any class, always think about that. Simple scope and then scale out. You can always add things later when you have time and resources, okay? And that's really for the engineering and design behind it. Okay, so that's the first option is the soil. You can go down. The second options, we're gonna see really cool stuff like turtles, monkeys, birds, plants, flowers. We're gonna go to botanical gardens and things like that. So whatever you choose, I want you to be able to put down some information about what you see, like marine life. And if you can record like numerical data, that would be ideal. If not, information about the species, something that we can learn. Or if you're interested in art, right? If we come across things that are art related, you can also build your project in that. That's up to you. Okay. So this is going to be like a searching program. So what we can do is we can have a program that will be able to search for a certain type of species, like maybe record input when what they type in. If they type in this type of bird, right, show a picture. Really easy. Okay, and you can implement functions and stuff for that. I can show you how you can also do something like that with image later on. So these are some of the libraries and tools that you can implement for this type of project. Okay. And then the third option is going to be Costa Rica coffee. So we want to be able, we are going to visit Costa Rica Coffee Farm in Tarazú, I think. And we are going to document maybe some harvest process, products, farming techniques. And you can also implement pictures and or text to be able to display. You can tell the story on how coffee is produced there and what makes their special coffee. There's so many different types of coffee that they probably produce. And these are some of the optional libraries that you can use. Okay. And so the same requirements are carried out for all the options. So what do you turn in? You are going to give me at least like a summary. There is a document that you would use to tell me what kind of program you're writing, what's the functionality of your program. So in any software, you would have some form of documentation. And then, if you don't have the whole paragraph, just answer the questions, okay? What is your program strong in and what is it weak in? So if you have multiple people team, dedicate someone to document, okay? Or you can all do it. Then you are going to write pseudocode, and I will show you how you can do that, be able to basically start procedure for your program from beginning to end, kind of like the purple font that I gave you today, right? And then part 2 is going to be your actual program. I do read all my students' code from start to begin to end, and I test all programs. This is why sometimes I do take a little bit longer to grade the project. So if your program doesn't work, you should still turn it in. And when I look at it, I will tell you why it doesn't work, okay? Because that feedback is important for students because they would understand why certain issue happens. So submit it. Then you are going to do an assessment. It is a Google form. I want you to grade yourself and the other people, right? It is a good form of reflection on how you do. And I do read this, so you can, if you work with another person, and don't try to be nice, just be honest, okay? Because I see a lot of people on there, they give everybody a 10, and because, and then their project is not that great, right? So be honest. And then if you want to showcase your project, I recommend this. You can use Google Site, which is really easy. Or if you are in computer science, you should know how to use GitHub by now. I will also take GitHub, and I do have a page on how to be able to do that, okay? And Google Site, it would take like, I don't know, not even 30 minutes to put together. Drag and drop, you can add it, but make sure it's public. I hate it when I get a project and I can't see anything because it's private, right? Even on GitHub, I'm clicking on the link and I'm not seeing it. And on the last day of class, I do not want to send emails out to people and say, I cannot see your project, please, but so part 2, Python file needs to go up. Part 1, a document needs to submit. Part 3, screenshot and a link. Okay, but put it on a document, right? Like a Word document, a link and a screenshot. That's it. Okay. So this is only 15% of your grade. Now, let's say that you say, oh, forget it, I don't want to do the project, right? From my experience, that will just be a 0 for all parts. That will lower your grade by 1 letter grade. If you have extra credit, like from quiz review game and other things, I can buffer some of it. It might lift your grade a little bit. So let's say you did everything in class, you got 100% all the way through. You went on a trip, and then after that, you're like, no, I don't want to do the project. But if you finished your final exam and all your stuff, there's still a chance that you would get a low A, if you get everything else done. But, just expect that it does drop your grade by at least 15%. Okay, the reason why I use 15% is some student, that's what they choose, so that's fine. Okay, I'm totally fine with that. If you submit your project, it just tells me that you applied the concept and you're capable of doing this. And I want you to have something taking away outside of your experience in Costa Rica, because if you tell people that you can code, you want to show them this is the program I made. And that's much cooler than not knowing how to do it, right? So, okay. And, portfolio, you can link it to your resume, and the skills, you never know, down the line, it comes in handy. Okay, any questions? All right, so what will it be? You want to call it the day and then come back tomorrow? Yes, it might rain too. Okay, because I know 8 o'clock it's gonna rain all the way through tomorrow. So let's do attendance right now so I can post your, I have to report census today for everyone. Okay, so who I have on Zoom today? I have Fiona, Camila, Marion, Natalie, Paula. So let me stop recording real quick.